Okay, so what we're going to do today is paint on my quilt that I'm doing with the copy. And I have started mixing some paint up, and I don't know if you can see, it looks sort of like a greyish sort of colour. What I've done is I've mixed, I think it's burnt umber, off the top of my head. Oh, yep. And ultramarine blue, which is this one. And that can get a really nice, yeah, I know I've got my water in the way. That can get a really nice sort of colour for shadowing and outlining and stuff like that. But then as soon as I add in the fabric medium, you can see it change colour. So I have to test, and it has to have fabric medium in it, otherwise it will run. So you can see here, on here, I don't know if you can see there, can you see? See the bleeding? That's without fabric medium. And you can see this one here, it's not bleeding, and that's because it's got fabric medium in it. I've used fabric medium in this one, look, it shakes, but not enough because you can still see a bit of bleeding in it. So when I add that on, you can see it's like a funny colour. I've got to change the colour of it, but you can see it's not bleeding. So going back to this, you can see now I've added quite a bit of the fabric medium, fabric fixative, and I use one from Derivan, and you can see it change colour. It sort of gets like a aqua colour change. So I add a little bit more of the brown in, I'll add more water, because the water also will help change the colour as well. But I'm looking to try and get more of a shady sort of grey, bluey, greeny grey, which I'm getting there, it's slowly getting there, but getting the right amount of fixative in it can be a little bit tricky, so that takes a bit of practice. Sometimes it takes a little bit of playing as well. Not always. I've just added a little bit of black in. Black doesn't always react like you think it's going to. As you can see, it's sort of still in that grey tone. It hasn't overdone it, but what I want to do is just check on here that when I paint it doesn't bleed, and at the moment it looks like it's not bleeding, and you can see it's sort of like a greeny, browny, grey sort of funny colour. So that's going to be the colour I'm going to start with. I'm just going to lighten it up because it will dry darker. So to lighten it up, I'm going to probably add in maybe a bit of yellow and see what that does. If it doesn't work, I'll change the colour and put something else in. So I'm just using acrylic paints, and any kind of acrylic paint will do. Because I want to keep that sort of greeny colour, the yellow should help. See how it's going more khaki-ish. I'm going to try a little bit of white as well, see what that does. I've got any left of that, yep. And this. I'll have it all over my fingers now. And it's brought it back to that grey green, which is quite nice. Now these paintbrushes I'm using are not good quality ones, because I'm just with the fabric medium. That's a better. See how much lighter it is now, just by adding a little bit of yellow, and it's much lighter. So I've got some dark parts of it over here still, which I can use. So I could add dark in and then lighten it up with that. And I could also clean out my brush. I could also mix this up here, and it gives me another bit of a goober on there, and just take some of that, and that gives me a lighter version of what I've got going on over here too. So you can see it sort of mixing up and moving. Add a bit of medium into it. You can see it changes colour straight away. But the medium on your brushes, if you leave any of the medium on your brush, sorry, you'll find that it will be, it's a nice light one, it'll go, what they call it, like gluish. It sort of acts like a glue on your brush and it can ruin your brushes, so you really need to, when you're finished, make sure you get all that medium out. So if I was just to put paint on, I'll just mix up some water and just put paint on the fabric like that, you'll see it'll bleed. You might not see so well with that colour. So you'll see it sort of gets like an echo around it. So you can see it bleeding all the way around the edge, all the way around the edge, whereas this one it's not. It's got a sharper edge, and that's because of the medium. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is, because I've tested all my little colours on fabric to make sure they're what I want them to be, and this is the scary part where we put it on the quilt and freak ourselves out. So I'm going to move over to the quilt and I'll be back. Okay, so now I've swapped my brushes over because I want to use a different brush, and I've got paper towels because I don't want to drip anywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to work up in here, which is here, and you can see it's quite dark. There's quite a bit of shadow in there. So by just wetting the brush, taking the excess off, I can grab the darker part. You can see I've just loaded up the brush. This is where we cross our fingers and our toes and everything else. And we start filling in. And with fabric, you'll see you'll get lots of little hairy bits, which is fine. So I'm going to try and get in there, and there we go. Get more of a definite shadow. I'm still on the darker colour, and I want to wash over this because I want to keep the pattern behind it still in the picture. If you can see the pattern. Now you might ask, why would you put all those fabrics and then paint over them? And the reason being is because the fabrics might have the picture, the basis to what I want, but they might not have the exact colour, and they don't. I want them to be different, so I start by building up the colour, and you can see it's like working with watercolour, except it just doesn't run as far, and that's because of the medium. And that's completely changed that fabric and makes it look more of a natural shadow. This is a fairly long process, and it takes quite a lot of stopping, standing away, taking photos, which I find helps. Taking a photo, looking at the photo, and then coming back to it, and waiting for it to dry and all that sort of stuff. And the reason why you do that is because you get to look at it as through someone else's eyes. So you can see I changed colour there, put a little bit of a lighter one in, and that's because I'm coming into the next section which is a little bit lighter, so I'm going to bleed it in. And that's a definite brown, and I'm going to pop that over the top. Even though it's got no medium in, the medium's already in the fabric now. So so I can just add a little bit of tone in there. Okay, so just keeping that brush reasonably damp but not soaked. Constantly looking backwards and forwards at the picture. I don't know if you can see me doing that, but Dottie's videoing. So as I look back and forwards, I'm sort of looking at what areas are a little bit darker and a little bit lighter. Anything that's really white, I'm going to blotch around the edges, because I can't imagine that it would be like a definite white blob. Start again. It normally would be sort of in between, like a highlight in between feathers and stuff. So you can see I'm just adding a little bit of dark here and there. And it gets quite dark up over here. Once I've got the fabric medium down, I can then add, which is in this paint that we pre-mixed, I could probably then add a little bit of the black over the top, just to bring, I'll show you what I mean. I don't want too much, just to a little bit change, because nothing's, you know, black and white as such. It's everything's got variations of texture and tone. So you can see how that changes it again. A bit darker over here. And I'll come back to that spot in a minute, as I want to blend some of that in. The beauty with acrylics is that I could just dampen this again and make it move. You wouldn't use oil paints on fabric. Oil paints will only, they'll leave an echo because of the oil. I'm not too sure, I haven't used an oil paint with a medium, and I'm not too sure how it would cope. Might be a bit hard on the drying side of things. So you can see I don't know, well, I'm not too sure if you can see, I'm grabbing at different parts. So if you have a look at my paint palette, which looks like an unorganised mess, I'm actually grabbing from different sections, and the reason why I'm doing that is because some of them are darker in colour and have different, so if I grab over here, it gives me a different colour than grabbing up over here. So I'm just building up and coming out here, and you might ask why I've got this yellow sitting there, but if I add that little bit of yellow in, changes the colour again and helps bring some of the natural colours from the bird in. So you can see how I'm making it sort of splotchy. I'm not just putting one colour on and letting that dry and that be it. I'm actually working it in, ingraining it into the fabric. I've placed plastic underneath this quilt. It most likely will go through to the back, so I will eventually put a fake back on it, I suppose, what you'd call it. Adding a little bit of black in around certain areas will help give contrast, but I'm not that I use black a lot, but in paint, but I used to, but I find that it helps with fabric, because fabric works a bit different to canvas and the like. stop in a minute and have a bit of a look and reassess. Take a little bit more of that yellow and just brush it in now. I'm going to add water and I'm going to work it in. You can see how it works in, because in the photo he has a little bit of yellow, not a lot, and then I need to come back over and just work it through. You can see the yellow is still in the paint, which is fine, and if I don't like it I can come back and pop a different colour in. It doesn't have to stay like that. That's the beauty of paint, especially acrylic. At the moment it just looks like a muddy mess, but it will have structure. You see how the quilting's, you can now see it. So I sort of did a bit of a dry brush over. If I take off too much of the white in here, I can always come back with white paint. It's no real biggie. It's nicer to leave the fabric sometimes, but it can also work in your favour. If you do overdo it, it doesn't really matter. You can see how the different fabrics are reacting differently to what I'm using. So you see the green reacts differently to this one. If I want to add white into that, because I want to add those white little feather spots, not that that'll be staying like that, but just goes to show that it's as easy as that to add a little bit of highlight in. I'm going to stop on that end there for a minute because it's quite wet, and I'll come back to it. I'm going to work up this top part of the feather. So I'm getting lighter, but I've still got, you know, that same tone, but it's a little bit lighter. So in the underneath the feathers, I'm going to put the darker under here because that won't be catching any light. I'll just feed that across. Now, and I'm just going to blend it in a little. And you see if I just brush over that top bit there. It's only really lightly touching it. It helps to give a bit of depth into that outside feather. So now I've just grabbed white paint straight off the thing. It's got no medium in it at all, and the reason being is because I've already got it on my fabric, like I said earlier. So you can see I made that a little bit dark before, even though it's meant to be a little bit dark, but I want to give the illusion of the light hitting that. So I can just touch over, and it, you know, if you go too far, like you touch too far into that centre bit, and grab that again and just retouch up. My brush is doing some funny stuff. You can see the little hairs on the end of it. I'm going to use them to my advantage. So I'm going to add some detail. And very, very light feather touches on there. I'll move to the next one. And if you have a look at the other area over there that I did earlier, you can see it's changing now. It's lighter, it's changing colours, it's moved, so to speak, and that's why I'll end up going over it a couple of times. So that's the way the paint works. So you can see, as soon as I go back over it, it changes it again. You see the quilting coming alive there? It's making the paint work for me. I'm just going to go and get some white paint and I'll be back in a minute. Alright, so we've stopped for a little bit of lunch and we're back. Now, I've mixed up my colour again, but I might have mixed it up a little bit differently, so you might see changes in colour, which is fine. All adds to the effect of the art. And if I do a very light brush over, you can see the quilting really well, which is nice. Getting windy outside. So the paint's a bit thicker now because I'm adding white without thinning it out to the ends of that bit of grey that I did, because I'm wanting to bleed out the shadowing so that it doesn't look like I've just plonked it there. Again, it gives you that, I just love the texture you get with paint and fabric. So I'll grab a bit of paint off the end. You notice it's got a sort of like almost like a greeny tinge to it. It's not green, it's just the tinge that it has. Just giving it some depth. Here's that little bit of yellow that I painted before. I'm painting over it now. Hasn't made any difference. So I'm going to build up along here a bit. Just on one side. So it's looking rather dark, which is okay because I'm going to put my lights in a bit later. You can see this paint runs a little bit more because I've added more water than I did before. I'm sort of trying to take away some of the definite lines between fabrics, so I'm sort of trying to blend in those areas. I don't want it sort of looking too cartoonish and yeah. I'm going to swap brushes now. I'm going to add in some white. Let's find the brush I want. Now I've got clean water. I'm going to reach it. I'll just swap this over. And I have medium. The medium's a little bit mucky, but it shouldn't affect it too much. Add that in there and work out of this one for the time being through painting. And a bit of water. Might need more paint before I'm due. So I'm just going to move this for the time being. This is quite watery, but it's not bleeding, which is good. You don't want it to bleed. If you wanted to bleed, then you wouldn't add the medium in. But you get more of a watercolour look. So once I add a bit of white to this in the watery colour, I'm going to then come back in with the heavier paint, not so watered down, because now it's got medium on it, I can paint over the top without it running. Almost like putting a base coat on, I suppose. Okay, so you can see it's quite translucent. I'm just going to grab some white paint out of here and make a mess. And I'm using it straight out of the lid. And you can see this is quite heavy. It's quite thick. So if I'm wanting to put, say, sun highlights along here, and I want to make it look like it's quite bright, this is where I can build up with this. So rather than putting a watered down version of the paint, dirty bit. So say I want to put and you do, because it is fabric and it is porous, you do need to build up that colour. But you can see it. It's much thicker. And it's not running at all. And the beauty of this medium is that once I actually iron this, it is permanent. So, although you wouldn't want to try and get this paint out now. So now I'm just blending some of that to give it the shadow that it needed. And I'll come back. I might do up here. See again, it's quite thick. It's going to take quite a while to dry, that thick stuff. But once it does, I'll be able to put another layer on, and it'll be quite prominent, like it'll really stand out. You can see the difference between the fabric and the paint. It's you can see how I've touched around here. I would touch them up again just to give it the illusion of ruffled, because it's not a definite black and white. There are different textures in here. You can see grabbing the extra paint off the end of that brush and the side of it. Might as well use it up. I can then help blend it through a little bit, and it helps give it the illusion of being more ruffled feathers than not. And they will dry a little bit differently than what they look like now. So I'm just tapping over the top of these with a bit of white, because I do need to throw a touch of the yellow in, and I want the yellow to grab on the white. If I don't, it won't grab and it'll blend in. It's excess. Okay, back to the runny one. That was just straight medium. Sort of putting a bit of paint on and a bit of medium alternatively, just to help make it spread. As you can see, I haven't quite finished quilting this yet. probably do a short video on that as well. Okay, so I've cleared up those few a bit. I'll grab some more paint. I'll just grab my doodah. I want it thicker, so spatula. Because I've got medium on there now, again, I can just paint straight over. You do use more paint this way, but you get a real good coverage. You see it goes into the holes of all the stitches. Again, over the top of that. Each time it dries off a bit, I'll pop some more on it. I'm going to see how you got the lines. See those lines from, if I blend into those, it smooths them out a bit. I won't do it to all of them, but if you don't like them, there is a way of getting around it. You might have to drop a little bit of water on just to loosen up the paint a bit. Just blend them in. Personally, I don't mind them. They're not really that big a deal. So that bit of fabric there was a lot bluer, and the others had a lot more of a blue tinge to it, so by painting it I sort of take away that you'll see that the textures underneath from the pattern, you can see the little patterns that's in there, will still come through. Oops there, but that won't affect. That would have been different if I had to use just a plain white fabric. You wouldn't have those underlying textures from the prints. So I've done a bit of an oopsie there, so I'm going to fix it up in a minute. Alright, so I'm going to come up here a bit. If you blob of paint on and spread it right across here. You see there's little gaps in between. Sometimes in between the sewing with raw edge applique, you get little gaps and stuff. You try not to, but it sometimes happens. So this is where you'd fix them up. Make sure you have no gaps. Okay, a little bit of paint left in the palette, so I'm just going to use it up. So, I'm going to go back to my other colours. Palette back over. I'm not going to touch that brush because I want that just for the whites. And I'm going to grab the flat edge brush, this one, you can see that dotty, that brush, because I want to add in some of that lemon that need to just soften it down a bit. She's a bit bright. And because I've already painted on here with the fabric medium, I think then, I don't have to put any more fabric medium into it. It's already there. So you'll see this will give it the colour it needs. It will dry differently, as I've said before. And because the white's still a bit damp, it's going to blend. It might look a lot more than the photo, but in saying that, this is my interpretation, and it's like yourself. If you ever decide to paint fabric, it's your interpretation of what you see. I'm not trying to make it look identical to the photo. I'm just using the photo as a bit of a guide. Just placement of where these colours and that might be. And then you can put in as much or as little as you like. You can see how just making it come down the actual feather gives it the graduating look. But I'm only very, very lightly touching it, but it's going to be enough that you get the idea. If I want it darker, I need to use straight from the colour, and you can see there just that little bit of dark yellow changes the depth of it. I'm going to probably do a little bit more work on the grey area. It's going to be the hardest one, the grey area, getting that right. Okay. So I'm just going to stand up, paint while you watch, just because I need to see it from a different angle. Want to cover a large area. See, I've gone over here. You would work it into your piece, and even into your stitching. Back to the small brush. So at the moment it looks like a whole heap of muddy, horrible looking colour. But it will take shape just like the rest of it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just fill in some of these a little bit more and work back on up here with some of the white. As you can see, once you put the white and the lemon, it actually does look more like feathers than a jumbled mess of colour. So I'm going to let it dry for a little bit and back to you soon. Okay, so I've finished painting off the other side off screen because it was more of the same. So I added a luminescence, so you can see it's got a little bit of a sheen to it, just to give it something different. And now we're going to work on this side. So I'm slowly adding colour in. Can't quite get the same colour, but it'll work. It'll be fine. So again, same scenario, adding in and getting my detail. dirty, that paint, so I've swapped over to the paint pot. And this paint that I'm using is it's called Texcraft Dual Purpose, and it's a fabric paint. I purchased this through Lisa Walton's website. She's a textile artist, and I'm nearly at the bottom of it, so I've decided to just use it from here. So I don't need any medium with this because it's already got its in it. Now I'm going to take some out. I'm going to mix it up. It's going to end up getting some grey in it, so some black in it to make it grey. If I put it back in the bottle, I'll end up with grey, not white, in my bottle. So I'm using a fairly big brush to cover fairly big areas. You can see I'm leaving the head separate because I want to make sure that I separate that from the wings, so that when you're looking at it from a distance you can see the difference between the head and the wings. So I've already popped some of the shadow colour in, and I'm going to pop this white over the top, and then I'll go back to the shadow colour. I've got an absolute mess here. I've already got paint on my jeans. I think Dottie's got paint on her top. So just for now, till I move it, I'm going to swap brush. Just move that. I'm into here. I've got a bit of grey here from last time, so I'm just going to dampen it up. And just bleed that in a bit. Some black. Just so now I'll add a bit of white to the black. Turns into grey, of course. That's how I can get my tonings to work a bit better for me. See how I bleed that down, really work it into the fabric. That's right there. I think that's monofilament actually. Before I start blending in that black, I just want to add more white. Oops, doesn't matter too much. Okay, before that dries I might add in, blend in that grey. I'll just dampen my brush and pretty much just blend it in, get the excess off the paintbrush. What are you doing, kitty? What are you doing? It's a bit cute. What's this? Oh. She just licked it. It's not good for you, kitty. Don't eat it. Cheeky bugger. Here we go. We have footprints on my painting now. What are you doing, kitty? Ready? Let's stand on the paint. She can sit up there and help. Oh, she's going to sit on the wet bit. Oh, here she comes. Alright. Cheeky. Curious kitty. A YouTube sensation. Cheeky bottom. What you doing? What you doing? Okay, so I've added, you can see I've added a bit of black there, but what I want to do is, I'm trying not to get in the way of the camera, is, look at that. I need to add in some highlights and lowlights here. So I'm just starting out with a base, a bit of grey. And the reason behind that is that there's some shadows and creases along the way, and sort of trying to get them in there. Kitty's very curious today. Can't help herself. So a bit like over the other side where we had over here, where we were trying to get the look of the feathers, you know, ruffled, and we were just sort of doing that. I'm sort of doing that here in a much smaller area. Kitty, no. She's about to drink that paint water, which would not be good for her. So I'm going to have to let that dry so then I can work on it for the next step. I'll be back soon.